even the very best teams in pro football will take a whipping.
In the playoffs, you have to steal victories.
Start treating every pro football team's best and worst results sort of like a golf handicap and throw them out.
My FanDuel went open. My BetMGM went open. I'm like, yeah, well, God basically didn't want me to bet today.
Hey, happy holidays, 5-0. Did you hear the news about the Scrooge Aaron Rodgers? He emerged from the darkness and intercepted the plans of Aaron Rodgers to perform a Christmas miracle and play before this football season was out.
Man, the Jets could use him on both sides of the ball this week, though. Man, Shek, they needed him versus the Dolphins. From Wondery, I'm Ryan Shazier.
Yeah, they did. I'm Dave Damashek.
And this is Gridiron Gut Check.
Yes, once again, happy holidays and welcome to Gridiron Gut Check. Every week I'm talking ball with Steelers icon, two-time Pro Bowler, Ryan Shazier. Hey, Shazier, you ready to give my takes a gut check from a player's POV?
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. Let's go.
All right, let's jump right in. And I think the biggest game of Week 15 was the Bills whipping America's alleged team in a game where Josh Allen only threw for 94 yards. For Cowboys fans, no showing in a big spot, I guess you could say, is distressingly familiar, but I happen to think this team is made of tougher stuff in years past, or at least don't have as stiff a competition underneath them in the NFC. They lost this week, but they're still a force to be reckoned with come January. How say you?
Man, to me, when I look at the Cowboys, they remind me very much of the Dolphins. It's like you just don't know what you're going to get from them. Sometimes they're America's team. Dak is throwing it to CeeDee Lamb, making everything look well. But then when they have to go against a little bit of turbulence, when the weather's not well, they're in Buffalo, and they're out one of their key players in Jonathan Hankins. You see that the Bills are able to run the ball for 200, almost 300 yards on them. And for a team that is a contender, a serious contender, man, I just talked to my friend James White about this last night, former Patriot. He was like, man, you want to be you want to be trending up right now in this time of the year. You don't want to be trending down. And one thing that I've seen from the Dallas Cowboys and I've seen from the Eagles this week is that they're both trending in the wrong direction. Obviously, the Cowboys, this is a one loss out of a few, but the Eagles, this is 3 losses in a row. But for somebody to go for one player to go for 220 on you, and then them to also be able to run the ball on you and only have to throw it 15 times for 94 yards. This reminds me of when Penn State played Michigan. It was like, hey, we're going to run the ball every single play. If you're not going to stop it, we're going to keep doing it. And that's exactly how the Bills treated the Cowboys this week.
Sure, I get you on that. First thing is, I will say about the Cowboys' result against the Bills, much like the Bills have had against some decent teams over the course of this season, unlike what was true, forget about even 30 or 40 years ago. In the last 10 or 15 years, a weird new thing has started happening, which is even the very best teams in pro football will take a whipping. You just didn't see that happen to, Bill Walsh's 49ers, as a for instance. They didn't lose games by 3 or 4 touchdowns. You do see that with, like I say, even the best teams in the league right now. So I think you have to kind of adjust your eye and your mentality and start treating every pro football team's best and worst results sort of like a golf handicap and throw them out. The truth is somewhere in the middle.
To the 49ers this year, though.
They lost, and they had that 3-game cold snap, and so even they were susceptible to it.
But they haven't had any whoopings, though, Shek.
Well, okay, I don't think that discounts my point. They might be the exception that proves the rule over 15 weeks this season, but we can go back through the last 5 years, and I can cite any number of examples that prove my point. My question for you, though, is the the evidence is pretty clear where the Cowboys are concerned. They might be America's team, but they're only good in Dallas. If they go out and about in the rest of football America, they stink. What is going on? Why? One of my favorite questions to professional athletes who are specimens and supposedly emotionally and otherwise predisposed to not worry about outside noise and other factors like that. Why then does it make a difference if you sleep in your own bed before a big game or if you sleep in a hotel? The dimensions of the field, as you may or may not know, are exactly the same home or away. Why are professional athletes why does it swing so wildly for some professional athletes?
It's a little bit different for every single person. Some people, they like sleeping in their own bed. You know, sometimes in that Hilton, a Marriott, wherever you're staying at, that bed is not how you wanted to feel. It might be a little stiffer than the bed that you normally sleep in. But also, some people, when it comes to the fans booing you or cheering you, they don't do as well. But I know that one advantage that the Cowboys have compared to the Steelers, the Buffalo, the Ravens, they have an indoor stadium. So they don't have to have the weather affect how they play at all. They understand inside this arena that we have our turf. We know what it's going to be 70 degrees and it's going to feel good every single time we play. When you're playing in Buffalo, man, that game this Saturday was 35 and rainy, and not like slight rain. It was really like raining really pretty hard, or 40 and rainy. That's a whole different environment than they're normally used to playing in. Dak likes to throw the ball around. They run it pretty well with Tony Pollard. Man, all those things really matter. You know, it's a lot easier to break tackles when it's raining outside compared to when you're playing at home. And so the communication is a little bit louder, especially on the offensive side of the ball if you're away. So some players, they just don't play as well when they're away because they love waking up and going home before the game, seeing their kids. Some players love being able to eat a certain meal from their wife or mom before the game. So just there's a lot of things that go on.
I get it. But you're a professional athlete. You have to overcome that kind of stuff. The swing between home and away for the Dallas Cowboys is pretty weird stuff. I know we just kind of accept that this is the reality in which we live. By the way, the distinction of home wins versus road wins has narrowed considerably. It used to be you had the decisive edge in terms of point spread and otherwise. It has moved closer to zero than where it used to be. It used to be a 3-point advantage for the home team. Now it's merely 2.5. Pretty standardly there.
So like the coaches and players are also understanding how to get better at this. They travel a little bit earlier sometimes. They eat certain meals sometimes. So they're trying to adjust. But at the end of the day, it's nothing like being at home. So you could try to overcome and learn everything that you possibly can learn. But I much rather hear my son cheering, "Hey, Daddy," than somebody booing, "You suck." You know, so it's that always can reflect.
Well, you know
no matter who
you know
are.
what also stinks for fans? They like the climate controlled vibe of a domed place, but they also like it even more when their teams win. And when you go under a dome, you are. I completely agree with the point you're making. When it's rainy and chilly out, hey, bad news, Dallas Cowboys. You know where it's rainy and chilly in January? San Francisco and Philadelphia, off the top of my head, are two places where that tends to happen pretty regularly. So you have to build yourself for those elements. If you're playing under a dome under the assumption that everything's going to run through us or else we might be in some trouble, that's stinking thinking. I think you shouldn't play under a dome. I understand that fans like it and players like the perfect field and the fast track and all that, but also I, as an old person who love going and sitting out in the frigid conditions in the snow or otherwise, there is a shared communal experience. You can delude yourself into thinking that the players and I are in the same spot because we're in the same bitter cold, and this is an experience that will be iconic in my life for decades to come because I was there with it. That sort of thing. That's why I sincerely believe Northeastern fans are more intense about their teams, about their football teams in particular, than a lot of Sunbelt football fans are. I know Florida fans love it and Texas fans love it, but I do feel that intensity from fan bases because of, like I say, that shared experience. I don't know if you buy that hypothesis.
We know why the dome is there. The dome is there so that they can get all the big time college games. They can get the Super Bowls. That's why the dome is there. It's not because of the fans. It's because they're able to get those big events there. Like the Ohio State's playing in the same stadium in 2 weeks. That's why the dome's there. If it was no matter what, people would come. They probably wouldn't have the dome. The only places that really need a dome is places like Minnesota that actually snows way too much.
That's where they need it more than anywhere else. Now that's a home field advantage. Anyway, let's move on, 5-0. The Eagles stripped Sean Desai of defensive play calling duties and handed him over to Matt Patricia, you know him, the old offensive coordinator of the Patriots, and promptly lost their third game in a row with their D giving up a 92-yard touchdown drive in the last couple of minutes to Drew Lock. Really a nice story if you watch that and didn't have a rooting interest. But I think their offense in Philly is really a recurring problem at this point. Jalen Hurts, 2 costly picks. CMC correctly predicting a QB draw on the Manning cast on Monday night. I don't know if you caught that. It was neat, but it also kind of highlighted how stale the Eagles offense is right now. You shouldn't be sitting at home calling out the plays before they happen. So what is the next move to shake things up for these Eagles?
Man, so the Eagles are on a 3-game skid right now, and they really had this one in the bag. But Drew Lock, I'm not going to even lie to you. I was trying to place a bet, but God was good to me because I was like, oh, he's going to throw a pick to finish this game off. I was going to bet against him, and I'm actually happy because he ended up throwing it to Jackson Smith and Jigba in the 1-on-1 coverage. But the problem that the Eagles have
God had something on.
Not allowing me to place my bet. No, God has something to not allow me to open my
you were
betting
saying
app.
He was rooting for the Seahawks on Monday night.
He would not let me open my draft. My DraftKings would open. My FanDuel wouldn't open. My BetMGM wouldn't open. I'm like, yeah, well, God basically didn't want me to bet today. So basically, but. The problem that the Eagles have, they have a real issue in the secondary right now. And obviously, they have guys like Darius Slay. They have Bradbury. They have Kevin Byers. But they're not figuring out how to play on a consistent level and slow people down. Bradbury was an all-pro last year and got beat for the game by a rookie. Then also, he had a lot of, there was multiple PI calls called on DJ Metcalf catching all type of passes. Obviously, he's that type of player, but this secondary is really struggling. And when it comes to the offensive side of the ball, Jalen, you can definitely tell that he's not the same Jalen from last year. He's getting a lot of, tush pushes. He's getting a lot of brotherly shoves. But when it comes to them in their passing game, it hasn't been that consistent. It seems like he's forcing the ball to A.J. Brown. Their running game is something that they was doing very well at the beginning of the season. And for some odd reason, they just really slowed down from it. And that it presents a lot of issues. When I was talking about James earlier, we was talking more about the Eagles than we were even talking about Dallas, because I was watching the game and playing the game with him at the same time, and we were just saying, and in this type of situation, you need to be moving in the right direction. The Eagles right now, obviously, they're 11-4, they're 10-4, which is still, every team in the NFL wish they were 10-4 right now. But you want to be 10-4, moving upward, understanding that your team has great chemistry. You don't see any chemistry with them. Jalen is just throwing the ball up, hoping for stuff to happen, and you're not going to win games like that. In the playoffs, you have to steal victories. You have to take them from people. That's what Ed Reed said to win the Super Bowl. You have to steal them and take them from the other team. And right now, it seems like the Eagles are trying to, finesse their way because they have better players, and that's not how you're going to win at the end of the season.
I mean, I'll be a little more extreme about it. I said 10 minutes ago, don't overreact to a single result, but this isn't a single result. They got whipped in Philly by the 49ers. Then they got whipped by the Cowboys in Dallas, and now they've lost at Seattle to Drew Lock, of all people. Their goose is cooked unless someone provides some major help for them come January. Obviously, the Eagles are making the playoffs here, and I'm not suggesting that, but without some major disruption, and I'm obviously not rooting one way or the other for injuries, we know they're going to happen, but if something doesn't disrupt what San Francisco has going on, and even Dallas, what cause for optimism is there if you're an Eagles fan? If you have to go back down to Dallas a month after you just got whipped there, what reason would you have, that case could you make for yourself that we're going to win it this time around? Times two with the 49ers. Somebody is going to have to do the heavy lift and knock the Niners off if the Eagles have any chance of getting to the Super Bowl. Otherwise, it's over for them, I'm sorry to say, in 2023. Great team, not a team that's going to get to the Super Bowl, though.
The Eagles, they can look back at that Dallas game and say, hey, this is a team that we can beat. Like last week, like we talked before this last podcast, the Eagles, when they played Dallas, they fumbled 3 times in their red area.
That's who they are now. They are turning the ball over every week.
Yeah, Jalen has to be a lot careful with the ball, and if he's not careful with it, like you said, that's a team that's going to be out of playoffs very easily. But I don't see them turn the ball over in the red zone like they were versus Dallas if they play Dallas again.
And simplistically, it does certainly look like they're just hemming Jalen Hurts in, and them being all the NFL defenses that are capable of, with personnel, of doing this. They're basically corralling Jalen Hurts, forcing him to throw the ball from the pocket. And for whatever reason, if he's a tick late with it or otherwise, it ain't adding up to what the 2022 offense looked like. And a lot of that, it's fair to say, was dependent on Jalen Hurts working that edge, the threat of him throwing the ball or trucking you or giving the ball off to the running back behind him in an RPO, whatever it is. When he is hemmed in and turned basically two-dimensional, he's obviously not the same QB, and neither is this team right now. All right, let's move on. We've been talking about this for weeks, but after another Niners blowout win, it's clear someone on this team is getting some hardware at the end of the season. I see you, Lamar Jackson, over there in Charm City. However, CMC balled out once again this week. Brock is putting up numbers on his team-friendly rookie deal. That's the best unit in the league. They deserve a trophy, and we shouldn't have to choose between Brock, CMC, Debo, or anyone else on that squad. Now, maybe MVP, and if we are applying, and I hate to dig in on nomenclature here, but valuable, Lamar Jackson is everything to that Ravens offense. I don't know if Brock Purdy is exactly. I want to give him his flowers, though, as much as possible. I do still think CMC, Brock Purdy said it too, CMC's the straw that stirs that Niners offensive drink. So go ahead and make the decision for us. Who deserves, if not Offensive Player of the Year, if not MVP, who would you give it to from that Niners offensive unit?
Oh, from the Niners offensive unit. Okay. If it was the Niners offensive, so who's going to get it is Brock Purdy, because he's the thrower of the ball. Who I think is the best player and most valuable player on that team is CMC.
I agree.
In my honest opinion, though, I hate that this is a quarterback award, because I know that Waddle had a big game this week versus the Jets, but you can definitely tell that this Miami Dolphins team is a completely different team when Tyreek Hill doesn't play. And I don't mean when Tyreek Hill is like, oh, we already game planned him out. I mean, if you're in the middle of a game, like think about all the players right now. If you're in the middle of a game and that player gets hurt in the second quarter of the game, how is your team going to react? And what's going to happen? The Miami Dolphins, when Tyreek Hill got hurt in the first quarter, they seemed completely out of whack. It was like, we don't know what to do. But you also can say that but I don't think that you can say that as much with the 49ers when it comes to Brock Purdy.
Why didn't they just put in Chase Claypool? Same difference, right? Oh, wait, no. That's a very big difference.
Not at all.
Sorry. You're right. No, sorry, I did that. Go ahead.
But if you take out Brock Purdy in that offense and put in Sam Darnold, I'm not saying Sam Darnold's going to orchestrate it as well as Brock Purdy, but I don't think that is going to be much of a fall off. If you take out Christian McCaffrey, that team is like when you take out Tyreek Hill, it's like, hold up, we got to figure things out. We got to change things up. And it's also the same with Lamar. If you take Lamar out of that team, man, it's a completely different team. So to me, I feel if you take who's the best player, I will go with Tyreek. But if you're talking about who's going to get the award, it's going to be Brock Purdy.
I'm not positive. There's still 3 weeks left, and I do think all hash is once and for all settled by the Monday night game. Lamar Jackson gets the better of Purdy and the Niners and the Ravens win that game, I think then the buzz will officially move things towards Lamar Jackson fully. If Brock Purdy has another, near flawless game against the Ravens defense and the Niners win, I think people will move in that direction too, unless CMC has another 3 touchdown type of performance. And, my pushback always went, well, clearly it's got to be Brock Purdy as the MVP. And it kind of extends into the fungible running back conversation. Like, don't spend a lot of money or draft picks or otherwise to get a high-end running back. It doesn't make a difference. Then why is the guy renowned for making any halfway decent running back and any halfway decent quarterback look at their very best at minimum? Why did he go out of his way? And I'm talking about Kyle Shanahan, obviously. Why did he go out of his way and trade away so much to get CMC? He knew the difference that guy would make in a league where everybody's decided, especially where Kyle Shanahan's concerned, more than anyone else. He can make anyone go. What's it, Matt Breda or Tevin Coleman? He'll make everyone look good. Then why did he feel he needed to go get CMC? At the same time, the Brock Purdy thing, as much as people have talked about it, how did this, if this was 100 years ago, when football wasn't the high-end 365 business that it is, it would be one thing. It would have been explainable a quarter century ago before Tom Brady somehow slipped through the cracks. But everything we've seen now, and all the scouts and all the people behind their computers weighing in on, have you seen this kid from blankety blank directional school in Oklahoma? All that kind of stuff. How did Brock Purdy slip through the cracks? And am I supposed to be cynical and angry with the scouting community? Or is this more sense in this holiday season of the wonderment that still remains for the underdog story in sport? I think I'm going to go with the latter just so I don't get any more Scroogey than I already am. Yeah,
to me, the 49ers, the situation with them is Kyle Shanahan is a mastermind, and you can actually see what Mike McDaniels has learned from him because their offenses are very similar. But what's so crazy is Raheem Mostert's in the CMC role, and Tyreek is in the Debo/Ayuk role. So they have. And Debo,
by the way, that's my Super Bowl pick: Niners-Dolphins.
Yeah, I don't see that one happening, but I think that's that would be a great Super Bowl. But what I have to say is the reason Cal went out his way for a player like CMC, and everybody say, oh, you shouldn't draft a person in the first round, this, and that. CMC, his skill set fits perfect for how Kyle Shanahan likes to likes to call an offense. They run a lot of zone reads. CMC has great change of direction, great speed, great vision. So he understands how to also get him in space, get him the ball, to allow him to. Everybody that plays for the 49ers besides Ayuk are all, give me the ball right now and I can figure something out. Ayuk can also do that, but everybody else is just basically running backs that play a bunch of other skill positions, if you really just think about it. And that's why I think that this team is playing so well, and that's why CMC's play so well, because he understands how to manipulate the defense to put people in space. I was just watching film, and I'm like, why is somebody open all the time when you watch the 49ers? Three of the 49ers touchdowns this week versus the Cardinals, somebody was literally wide open. Like, nobody within 15 to 20 yards of them. It's like, how do you play NFL football and nobody's within 15 to 25 yards of you? So, and that tells you the play calling that they have over there. But when it comes to Brock Purdy, one thing that Brock Purdy is really good at, and this is what's overlooked, and this is what sucks, and I'm completely happy that I was able to go in the first round. Height, weight, speed, doing all that stuff. I was a prototype for the linebackers that we have now. But the biggest problem about being a prototype about that is there's a difference between somebody that has all the skill sets, all the attributes, but there's one attribute that most people don't have. Tom Brady has it, Brock Purdy has it, Patrick Mahomes has it, and it's the factor of, hey, in this game, I'm going to figure out a way to win. I'm going to figure out a way to beat you. I don't have to look like the best. I don't have to look like the strongest. I don't have to be the best. But at the end of this game, you're going to figure out why I'm the one here, why I won this game. The thing is with Brock Purdy, he has so many weapons, and he understands he understands their offense so well. he's putting everything exactly where it needs to be. But when it comes to just winning games, you always see that he's found a way to do it, and that's what reminds him so much of a Tom Brady and a Patrick Mahomes and those type of guys.
But the problem is that, you know, Tom Brady at Michigan wasn't that ultimate winner. Brock Purdy at Iowa State was not that ultimate winner. They were better, the Cyclones, than they typically were, but it wasn't like that they had that vibe. And certainly Brock Purdy didn't have that guy
though, either.
No, I know. I'm just saying that it's really hard to divine who is that guy, because it's not like you just look back through their resume and say, man, this guy always showed up in big spots late. That didn't happen with Brady in Michigan.
They could have, because Patrick Mahomes was the same way. They could have, because Patrick Mahomes was the same way. They might have put the plays there, but their teammates didn't make the plays with them.
I know. I'm saying that's why it's an elusive trait to try and figure out. What I do think, as a side note before we move on here, is that Mr. Irrelevant is now getting a lot more shine than the first round draft pick who everybody thought was going to be great, Tua, which is a funny inversion of what you're getting at, which is late round draft picks, we're always waiting for them to turn into a pumpkin. First round guys, we're waiting for them to elevate. Somehow Tua is in this weird spot where he can get no credit from anyone ever. And by the way, in a year when it feels like about 98% of the available starting quarterbacks have gotten hurt, Tua, right as rain in terms of health all season long. Moving along, Chip Kelly proposed some interesting stuff this week. I mean, I think he nailed it, as a matter of fact, with how he would want to fix college football, including separating football from the other collegiate sports entirely and having one giant 64-team conference instead of 4 or 5 smaller conferences. So, Shazier, you were first team all Big Ten twice, so I don't expect you to be objective here necessarily, but Chip sold me on this way of thinking. CFB would be better off if we did away with conferences entirely. How say you?
So at first, when I first heard this, I was like, man, it's not going to make a difference. I don't think that it's going to make a difference. I don't think it's a good idea. But then I actually sat down, watched the interview with him, and just listened to what he had to say. I don't know about the 64-team conference, but I do think that teams leaving, the football team leaving, and them creating some type of organization to allow them to play football and allow everybody else to stay within their region to play the sports. Because he made an example. Arizona's softball team is really good. And UCLA's softball team is really good, and they have a really good rivalry. And now they're never going to play again because they're in the Big Ten. And, you know, and that's a shame. And it's a lot of other things like that, like Oregon and Oregon State. Like, they have rivalries throughout all their other sports, and they're not going to play anymore because they're in the Big Ten. So to me, when it comes to the schools staying within their own conference, but football still, you know, creating this powerhouse and allowing all the teams to play each other, I think that's a great idea when you really come back to think about it, because it allows everybody still to play against each other. The one thing that's really going to be difficult is just still understanding the conferences, because when it comes to bringing in money for the school is still going to bring in a lot of money. They're still going to be able to produce. But the one thing I really liked about what he said is the revenue sharing with the players. That, you know, the players are the ones that's helping this wagon go. And I hate the fact that, you know, people don't feel like players should be paid, and obviously they are getting paid now, and it is kind of out of hand with the transfer portal and all this type of stuff.
No, what people get, no one likes change, Shazier. This is the recurring theme, that there is a giant swath, no matter what the issue is. If you change it in society, like I say, I don't know what the percent, half we'll say, no, we can't do that. And the main reason, whatever rationalizations they summon to justify where they stand, it really deep down is about that they don't like a disruption of what they already know. And I you know, like Texas almost joined the Pac-10 about 12 years or so ago. And I remember initially thinking, Texas in the Pac-10? That would stink. It doesn't sound right. Now West Virginia, obviously, then they moved to the Big 12, and now we have, you know, Oregon in the Big 10 and everything else. And as it turns, and NIL deals for the last couple of years. And as it turns out, the people who are saying, I don't like players getting paid in college. What they didn't want was a disruption of what they know. As it turns out, it hasn't really ruined things. Now, players moving around quite a bit. The transfer portal is probably jarring for the old school football fans out there. But I do think that what Chip said that appeals to me the most is the idea of what Texas almost had made true by joining the Pac-10, like I say, 12 years ago, which would have been not a Power 5 conferences, but a Power 4, and the regionality of it would then exist. You would have, much like college basketball's tournament, you would have a true Northeast, a true Southeast, a Southwest, and a Northwest, and the champion from each of those 4 regions meeting in a Final Four sounds awfully good to me. That's what appeals to me in football terms. I hear what you're talking about, NIL and paying players and everything else, and I interrupted you to make that whole point.
I like that idea. The biggest thing for me is once you pull the football away from once you pull football away from the school and away from the conferences, it's going to turn into basically a miniature professional league. That's exactly what it's going to turn into. And I know a lot of schools, a lot of parents, a lot of viewers, they're probably not going to like that, but it's already there. And I think once you turn it into a big conference, we're not even attached to the schools. We're attached to the schools, but we're not attached to the conferences anymore. We have our own thing cooking. It's just going to turn into a miniature.
I hear you. I think the spirit of it, though, in a way, would return the regionality of it to the sport, which is what I miss the most, or what I want. I like the teams in my neighborhood playing those teams, the Rust Belt teams where you sit and where I grew up. I like seeing how we stack up around in that neighborhood before moving on to see how we stack up against Florida teams or teams playing out west or anything else. And I think that's kind of what Chip is offering with this idea. Hopefully someone is out there listening. Hey, you know what? Let's move on from this. Let's get some quick hitters. It's time to roll out this week's Nickel Package. 5 questions, 5 very brief answers, Shazier. Are y'all set here?
I'm going to try to be brief.
Yeah, you remember Joe Flacco. He's a familiar foe to the both of us. He has his team, which is the Browns, which used to be the Ravens. Well, that was his team, was the Ravens, but the Ravens used to be the Browns before Art Modell moved the Browns to Baltimore and made them into the Ravens with Ozzie Newsome, who is a Hall of Famer for the Browns. Anyhow, he has his team. It's the Browns? Right, it's the Browns. In position to secure a wild card spot coming out of the AFC North, except instead of the Ravens purple, like I say, he's doing it in that orange hat for the team called Browns. How far can Flacco take this team?
So I'm going to start off with this. Joe Flacco was my favorite quarterback to play in the NFL.
Is that a compliment or an insult?
You can take it how you want to take it. He was my favorite one to play because I have 7, or if you include the playoffs, I have 9 interceptions in my career in my 3.5 years playing, and 2 or 3 of them off him. So that was my favorite quarterback to play. But the thing is, there's always a competitive game. He has a major arm, so with him having that arm and being in the league and being one of the highest paid quarterbacks to ever play this game, he understands the offense. He understands how to get guys the ball. I think this is a really good situation for the Browns. The Browns have the number 1 defense in the league, so I wouldn't be surprised if he can take them to the divisional. I don't see them going anywhere further than the AFC Championship, though. I can't see this team in the Super Bowl.
I still remember. I don't have amnesia. I remember the end of last season, how he looked. He threw 3 picks last Sunday. He's not the reason. It's a great story. Good for him as a human being and all of that. Good for the Browns fans. But I don't think this story rolls into the championship round or anything like that. But in the meantime, it's nice stuff. And what is fun to think about is if he's under contract next year, which he now is there a possibility reasonably in week 1 of 2024 that they might say, no, Deshaun, just no. You just hold the clipboard. Learn from the master, Flacco.
I don't see that happening at all because you pay somebody $250 million.
I get it.
But I do see this team going pretty far. And the reason I think that is because their defense
Oh, see, like that sneeze just got in the way of what you had to say. That's what the defense there, Denzel Ward and company, are trying to do. All right, this week of football kicked off, or last week, I guess, sorta, when the Raiders shamed the Chargers 63-21. Brandon Staley, people were saying it from the first quarter on. In fact, they were saying it for the last 3 years, or at least some people were. Show him the door already. Shazier, the Chargers have Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, borderline loaded roster, Derwin James, Joey Bosa. You know who they are.
Not borderline.
Well, I mean, they're deficient in a couple of spots, but who isn't this side of the Niners? What went wrong for these Chargers this year?
I think it's a combination of things, and one of them is that Brandon Staley, he was a great defensive coach when he was a defensive coordinator. But when you go back and look at his teams wasn't playing well on defense. So his staple, he wasn't doing well on it, which also, I think they have the second highest paid defense in the NFL, which is insane for them not to be able to play but well. They have Justin Herbert, who everybody think is, the next coming, and he is a great player. But when it comes to having a coach, and this is the difference between Coach Tomlin, John Harbaugh, Kyle Shanahan, and Brandon Staley, they figure out how to win. And he has not figured out how to win. He has not figured out how to win, and their team has not figured out how to win. And if you can't win in NFL, the greatest league there is, you're not going to be there. And you could definitely start noticing that he was losing his team when it came to just looking at the morale and just seeing how guys were playing and the attitudes guys were having in interviews. You could definitely tell that after a while, going forward on 4th and 3 on your own 25, guys were like, "Yo, what are we doing?" And they're not winning those games. And after a while, you lose your locker room and lose the ability to win. If you don't have your locker room, it's a lot harder to win games when guys don't believe in the sauce that the coach is preparing.
All right, listen, I'm going to go with an audible here and change the order here. You're talking about losing the locker room, not winning games that you have to have, all that. Could make a case you're describing Mike Tomlin and the 2023 Pittsburgh Steelers. Is Mike Tomlin running out of runway here? 3 more games. We'll see who's under center on Sunday or on Saturday. Is this the final season for Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh?
So we were just talking about Brandon Staley. For 3 years, people say he should have been fired. For 3 years. Coach Tomlin has one bad year, a few bad games without his quarterback for 4 games, and everybody's like, "Oh man, he needs to go." So I think that people are being a little bit too jumpy in this situation. The Steelers fans and as a community, everybody has been so accustomed to winning, so used to winning. Ben Roethlisberger was there for 20 years. Kenny Pickett, he has not been consistent. But I don't think that this is Coach Tomlin's last year. I think if it is his last year, it's going to be more on him and not him getting fired. Because
that part I agree with.
Yeah, I think I don't see him getting fired. If he wants to move on and he seems tired, that's a situation where I see that happening. But I think I was talking to my dad about this, about the Miami Dolphins. Coach Tomlin is the perfect coach for the Steelers because when you think about coaches that remind you of the cities and the fan base that they coach, I feel that Mike McDaniels is the perfect coach for Miami. Like he's somebody that's flashy, he likes to joke around, he has the team that's like that. I think that's perfect. When you talk about somebody that's kind of cutting edge, Kyle Shanahan, he's perfect for the 49ers. Somebody that's a little bit rugged, and when you talk about John
Bill
Harbaugh.
Parcells with the Giants, Vince Lombardi with the Packers made sense, and Bill Cowher and Mike Tomlin makes sense with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I get it all, but all this talk about the Steeler way and all that is a lot of people are almost making fun of it. People who have been on the Steelers, high-end Steelers of the 21st century, from Ben Roethlisberger to Ryan Clark, are questioning whether or not there is a Steelers way or if anybody even cares about it. And all seasons are not created equal. I think Tomlin, for 16 years, has done gangbusters work. He has done meaningful work in Pittsburgh beyond just the Steelers. His meaning to pro football is profound and beyond. But over the last half decade now, this is, a third of his tenure at this point, starting basically with the loss to the Jaguars, getting whipped at home, a shaming. Coming off of that, then Roethlisberger hurts his elbow. And from that moment on, the clock starts of moving on from Roethlisberger, however long he stays around, and if he comes back from the elbow surgery. And he did remarkable work with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges and almost getting that team to the playoffs. And then Roethlisberger comes back, and they're 11-0. We know they're not as good as the record, but the record, you're as good as your record says. They make the playoffs. A nice story. He comes back for another year, does Roethlisberger. Improbably, they scratch their way into the playoffs again. Remarkable stuff. And then in 2022, rookie QB, no TJ Watt for half the year. Wow, another winning record. It was all building, though. It was all a part of a story that was building towards overcoming the Roethlisberger Hall of Fame career and moving on and fueling the plane at 30,000 feet as a franchise, not going 0-16 or 1 and whatever and getting a high-end draft pick, staying relevant, continuing to have winning seasons, getting into the playoffs more often than not, and moving into the next era of high-end football. This was the year where we were supposed to start seeing those dividends. The Steelers should be a double-digit win team based on the roster. They should be better than what they are. There is no vibe, and you talk about losing the locker room, from the wideouts to the defensive pieces, to fights in the locker room, to guys on tape. You don't have to know much about football to see a lack of effort there. I don't think that the Steelers are going to fire Mike Tomlin goodbye and be shown the door, but I could see them coming to a mutual agreement. Let's see if we can get you over to Washington, closer to where you grew up, Coach T. And a lot of his high-profile media pals keep saying the exact same line. Boy, 16 years is a long time. Same exact phrasing from Jay Glazer and beyond. Interesting.
Yeah, no, with the people that know him, if they have a little bit more insight than I do, then, it is what it is. But I just think when it comes to him and this team, you could definitely see that this team and some of the ways that they're playing, the ways that they're reacting, the antics, they're definitely not how things used to be, probably in Coach Tomlin first few years. Like, I remember I went to practice the other day, and they were practicing in the indoor. And I'm like, why are they practicing in the indoor? It's not raining. It's not cold. Like, what are they doing in the indoor? And, and I was like, yeah, these guys, they might need to be in the indoor more than we was able to, because we were never able to go in the indoor. So it just, right now, you can definitely tell this team there's things that they need to work on. There's things that they need to focus on, and that could be a combination if Coach Tomlin comes back or if he steps away. But I don't see him leaving on the Rooneys saying, hey, you're not good enough, because the Rooneys are very big on consistency. Consistency is the key to success, and the standard is the standard there.
I love when people say that, though. The Jets have been pretty consistent over the last half century too. Is that a good thing? No, it is not. I know. I'm making a joke. All right, let's move on, because these are supposed to be fast hitters here, Shazier. So let's get a couple more in real quick. This one intrigues me. I know where your head is on this one. You denounced Justin Herbert a little bit as not a winner. Baker Mayfield is winning games this year. Do you really think you'd rather are you really willing to say into your microphone right now, and it's being recorded, you'd rather have Baker Mayfield than Justin Herbert?
If Baker Mayfield has the same players as Justin Herbert, I think Baker Mayfield wins more than Justin Herbert does. So when you're talking about a player that is, man, we think that this guy he can throw the ball all over the place. He's a great quarterback. Cool, you can have all that, but that's not winning, football games. So at the end of the day, Baker Mayfield, when he has the players around him, he's shown that he has the ability to win. When he went to Cleveland and he was healthy, he had the ability. They went to the playoffs, won playoff games, then they ended up deciding to walk away from him. Now he has Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, he has Rashad White. They're winning football games. Think about all the talent that Justin Herbert has had since he's been in the NFL.
I don't think you're crazy. I don't think this is insane to say, I think what was insane was the Browns moving on from Baker Mayfield. That's the crime, and they're paying for it, literally $240 million worth of payment for that gigantic mistake as Joe Flacco takes them into the playoffs. Interesting stuff. Last one, the Titans tried to troll the Texans. I didn't care for this. How dare you do this jive? You decided to break up with the city of Houston. You don't get to keep their clothes. They tried to troll the Texans by wearing the Oilers uniforms against them. Then the Texans beat them with Case Keenum playing QB. The Titans get what they deserve, Shazier.
Yeah, I love when people troll you, mess with you, bother you, joke on you, and then you punch them right in the face. I love it. So they definitely deserve it. And they lost to Case Keenum. They didn't even have C.J. Stroud out there. So I love that Houston was able to go over there and punch him in the mouth and show him like, hey, we're better than you in the division, and don't mess with us. I love it.
Hey, D'Amico Ryans with Case Keenum is winning football games. Mike Tomlin with Mitchell Trubisky not winning games. I'm just pointing out reality. And I don't know what that's going to mean going forward. I do know that is it for this episode of Gridiron Gut Check.
Hey, make sure to follow, rate, and review the show on wherever you're listening. Check us out on YouTube on the Wondery channel. And make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any episodes. See you all next week.